Since the fall of Roe v. Wade, Republicans have banned abortion in 14 states and restricted it in more. But when given the chance, voters have overwhelmingly supported ballot initiatives to protect access to the procedure. This election year, abortion will again be a defining issue. Laura Barón-Lopez reports from the battleground of Michigan, where Democrats plan to keep reproductive health care front and center.
You found it? Great job.
Raised in a deeply religious and conservative household, Annie Sharkis stayed out of politics until the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
I gathered signatures. We, helped organize like a rally. I gave a speech at one, started going to like coffee hours and things like that with our local politicians, just getting more involved because I didn't want my kids to look back at this point in time and say like, okay, well, what did you do? And I couldn't tell them that I did nothing.
Now, abortion access is protected in Michigan, but voters are still thinking about it. Even though it's not on the ballot in Michigan this time around, do you still think that it is a top issue for a lot of voters?
Even if we're not worried about it in our state in particular, yeah, it's definitely something that people are using to gauge how they're voting.
The stay-at-home mom of two who lives in the suburbs of Detroit isn't excited to vote for Joe Biden, but Annie thinks he will ultimately make access to abortion safer.
With voting for Joe Biden, it is hard because I'm not a single issue voter. I don't specifically identify as Democrat or Republican. While I will vote for him, I wish that there was another option.
Do you think that you could ever vote Republican again?
I don't think that I would with the current direction that the Republican Party is going. I am so far from identifying with what they want to happen that I don't see it ever happening.
Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin wants to keep women like Annie squarely in the Democratic column. Her message to voters: abortion will always be on the ballot.
The other side has made this a central issue for them for 50 years. Their actions speak louder than words. Their actions are currently, like as we speak, trying to threaten a woman's right to choose, and people see that.
When voters turned out for abortion rights in Michigan in 2022, it was a victory for Democrats. In 2024, they're trying to replicate that success here and in states across the country.
It was a rallying cry.
Slotkin, now running for the U.S. Senate, is one of many down-ballot Democratic candidates trying to maintain urgency.
We have to understand that most people see this as a kitchen table issue. A decision about whether to have a child or not is the most profound kitchen table issue that we have. It's not separate from inflation. It's not separate from the economy. It's like your whole family trajectory and whether you're going to be able to afford that life.
What happened in Michigan became a blueprint for how to organize around abortion effectively. Ohio followed suit in 2023. Now, the right to an abortion will be on the ballot this November in 3 states, including Florida, which currently bans any kind of termination after 6 weeks of pregnancy. And similar initiatives could end up on the ballot in up to 9 other states this year, including the battlegrounds of Arizona and Nevada.
What happened in 2022 wasn't an anomaly.
Back in Michigan, state activists like Shanae Watson-Whitaker, who works for the nonprofit Reproductive Freedom for All, were instrumental in mobilizing voters in 2022. 2 years later, she's sharing that strategy.
Michigan, for a lot of folks, has been like a North Star. We specifically and intentionally had conversations with Black clergy, with clergy from other denominations, sat them down and talked about reproductive freedom. What people forget are that clergy are humans. They've experienced loss, miscarriage loss. They've had abortions. We believe in God and we believe in Jesus. And at the same time, we believe that government should not interfere with a woman's right to choose.
Meanwhile, Republicans who cheered the Supreme Court's reversal of Roe are struggling to find their footing. In March, the presumptive GOP nominee, Donald Trump, spoke favorably of a national 15-week abortion ban.
People are really, even hardliners are agreeing, seems to be 15 weeks, seems to be a number that people are agreeing at.
Then last month, he flip-flopped, saying states could decide for themselves.
The states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land, in this case, the law of the state.
Still, some top Republicans in Congress support the national 15-week ban and measures that would make it a crime to transport minors across state lines for an abortion without parental consent.
Thank you, Wisconsin.
More recently, Trump told Time magazine he'd allow states to both monitor pregnancies and prosecute those who violate abortion bans.
Republicans keep handing Democrats this issue every election cycle. It never seems to be out of the political picture.
Nolan Finley is the conservative opinion editor at the Detroit News.
What exactly would you like to see either the presidential nominee Donald Trump lay out or other Republicans across the board in terms of the specific policy towards abortion?
I would like him to stay away from a federal policy. I think that was the point of the Dobbs ruling. But I think the Nikki Haley solution of let's all sit down and find out where we can agree in terms of a point in the pregnancy where we're going to say, you've had time to make your choice.
Whether it's 6, 15 weeks.
15, maybe 20, wherever, somewhere in that range, where people can settle and say, this is fair. This allows people time to make their decision. This allows you to deal with rape and incest, etc. But it also prevents, something I think most people would be opposed to, and that's abortion in the last month or so of pregnancy.
For voters we spoke to in Lansing, they're heeding calls that abortion is an issue to turn out for in November.
Michigan voters, they recognize that this is an issue that goes beyond the borders of the state of Michigan.
I think we have all found out that we cannot rest on our laurels, that we must come out and vote for the right people.
Ultimately, Roe was a wake-up call for Democrats like Congresswoman Slotkin, one that she says exposed their party's complacency.
I think we let ourselves get comfortable, that we didn't believe the other side when they said we're coming for Roe v. Wade and we want to overturn it. We saw all that happening, but we just had a failure of imagination. What I want to do is say publicly to the whole country that we have a 10-year plan to get back to a federal right to an abortion. We're not going to let it just be a state issue. We're actually going to organize and mobilize to do the thing we didn't do for 50 years, which is pass a piece of federal legislation to codify Roe.
The result in November could determine if Slotkin's plans take 10 years or another 50. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Laura Barone Lopez in Michigan.